What if everything designed to save your time was slowly taking away the moments that made your life meaningful? Ethan Parker used to believe he had discovered the perfect formula for modern living. At 34 years old, he had built a career that many people dreamed of. He worked as a product manager for a successful technology company in Seattle, Washington, where every day was filled with new ideas, faster systems, and smarter solutions. His apartment was filled with devices that answered his questions, organized his schedule, and simplified every small task. With a single tap on his phone, groceries appeared at his door. With a few clicks, meetings were arranged, bills were paid, and problems that once required effort disappeared within minutes. Ethan loved the feeling of control. He believed time was the most valuable resource anyone could have, and he was proud of how efficiently he managed every hour of his day. His friends often admired his lifestyle. They joked that Ethan had found a way to remove all the unnecessary struggles from life. He never waited in long lines. He rarely wasted time on small chores. Every decision seemed carefully optimized. To Ethan, convenience was not just a luxury. It was a sign of progress. Why spend an hour preparing a meal when technology could deliver one in 20 minutes? Why spend time searching for information when an intelligent assistant could provide an answer instantly? Why make life harder when there was always an easier option available? But somewhere between making life easier and making life faster, something subtle began to change. Ethan did not notice it at first. It happened slowly, hidden beneath the comfort of convenience. His apartment became quieter. His conversations became shorter. His days became smoother, but somehow less memorable. He had more free time than ever before, yet he often found himself wondering where that time had gone. One evening, after finishing another busy workday, Ethan sat alone in his perfectly organized apartment. The lights adjusted automatically. The temperature was already set to his preference. His dinner had arrived exactly when expected. Everything worked exactly, as it should, and still, he felt a strange emptiness he could not explain. He looked around and realized something surprising. His life had become easier, but had it become better? The question stayed with him longer than he expected. Ethan had spent years learning how to remove obstacles, but he had never stopped to ask what those obstacles had taught him. He had saved countless minutes, but he had never measured what those minutes were replacing. The next morning, Ethan returned to his usual routine, unaware that a simple conversation with someone who viewed life differently would soon challenge everything he believed about convenience. Because sometimes the biggest changes do not begin when life becomes harder. They begin when we finally question why we wanted everything to become easier in the first place. The easiest choices often become the choices we stop questioning. After years of building a life around efficiency, Ethan Parker had become someone who rarely experienced inconvenience. Every part of his day had been carefully arranged to remove delays, effort, and uncertainty. His morning alarm adjusted itself based on his sleep pattern. His coffee machine prepared his drink before he even entered the kitchen. His calendar reminded him where to be, what to do, and when to move on to the next responsibility. Ethan saw these systems as proof that he was living smarter than previous generations. But recently, a strange feeling had started following him. His schedule was full, yet many days felt strangely empty. At work, Ethan noticed how often people search for faster solutions instead of deeper ones. Meetings became shorter, messages replaced conversations, and quick answers replaced thoughtful discussions. He understood why people preferred convenience. He had built his career around creating it. But he began wondering if speed was always the same as improvement. One afternoon, Ethan attended a company presentation about the future of technology. The speaker described a world where everyday tasks could become even easier. Machines would handle more responsibilities, services would become more personalized, and people would have more freedom than ever before. The room filled with excitement. Everyone imagined a future with fewer problems and more available time. Ethan felt the same excitement he once had. But then he looked around and noticed something unexpected. Many people were talking about having more time, but nobody mentioned what they would do with it. That question stayed with him after the presentation ended. More time sounded valuable, but only if people knew how to use it. Later that week, Ethan met Olivia Bennett at a small coffee shop near his office. Unlike most people he knew, Olivia did not rush through every moment. She was a 32-year-old elementary school teacher who seemed comfortable with simple routines. She carried a notebook filled with handwritten thoughts and ordered a coffee without using an app or customizing every detail. Ethan noticed that she was not rejecting technology. She simply used it differently. During their conversation, Ethan mentioned how much time modern tools save people. Olivia smiled and asked a question that surprised him. If technology gives us more time, why do so many people feel like they have less? Ethan did not have an answer. The question felt simple, but it revealed something he had never considered. Maybe the problem was not how much time people saved. Maybe the problem was that they had forgotten what made time valuable. As Ethan walked back to his apartment that evening, surrounded by the same conveniences he once admired, he started seeing them differently. The automatic lights, the instant deliveries, and the perfectly organized schedule were still useful. But for the first time, he wondered if making everything easier had also made some things less meaningful. And that was the beginning of a question Ethan could no longer ignore. The first thing Ethan Parker noticed was not that his life had become easier. It was that fewer things surprised him anymore. Every morning followed the same perfect pattern. His devices prepared his schedule, his applications organized his tasks, and his work systems predicted what he needed before he even asked. There was comfort in knowing everything was controlled. There was security in never having to struggle with small problems. But slowly, Ethan began realizing that the small problems he removed from his life had once been small moments of learning, patience, and connection. At the technology company where he worked, Ethan continued developing tools designed to make people's lives more efficient. He was proud of his work. He believed deeply in innovation. He did not see technology as a problem. In fact, he understood better than most people how much good it could create. It helped people communicate across distances, access information, and solve challenges that once seemed impossible. But after his conversation with Olivia Bennett, Ethan started observing something he had ignored before. He noticed how quickly people became frustrated when things were not instant. A website loading for a few extra seconds felt unbearable. Waiting for a response felt unnecessary. Spending time learning something slowly felt inefficient. Everyone wanted faster results, but fewer people seemed willing to experience the process behind those results. One evening, Ethan visited his parents outside the city. The trip was not planned through an optimized travel application. He simply decided to go. When he arrived, he noticed something different about their home. Nothing there was designed to save every possible minute. His father still repaired small things around the house. His mother still prepared meals by hand. Their routines were slower, but they were filled with conversation and memories. During dinner, Ethan watched his parents laugh about ordinary moments from their week. They talked about a neighbor they helped, a recipe they tried, and a walk they took together. None of those moments were efficient. None of them could be measured by productivity, yet they seemed deeply meaningful. Ethan began wondering if he had been measuring the wrong things all along. He had spent years counting saved minutes, completed tasks, and improved systems. But he had never counted the conversations he skipped, the experiences he replaced, or the moments he rushed through. Later that night, Ethan sat outside with a cup of coffee, something he usually ordered through an app instead of making himself. The quiet felt unfamiliar. There were no notifications demanding his attention. There was no schedule telling him what came next. For the first time in a long while, he simply sat and noticed the world around him. The sound of the evening air, the warmth of the cup in his hands, the peaceful feeling of having nowhere else to be. Ethan realized something important. Convenience had never been the enemy. The problem was that he had started believing anything difficult was automatically unnecessary. He had forgotten that effort often created meaning. The next morning, Ethan returned to Seattle with a different perspective. He still used technology. He still valued innovation. But now he carried a new question with him. If every part of life became easier, would people still remember how to appreciate the things that required time, attention, and care? For the first time in years, Ethan Parker began paying attention to the spaces between moments. He started noticing that the most meaningful parts of life were rarely the moments that had been carefully scheduled or perfectly optimized. They were usually the unexpected ones. A conversation that lasted longer than planned. A walk without a specific destination. A simple task completed with patience instead of speed. These small discoveries changed the way Ethan looked at his own habits. He did not suddenly reject technology or abandon the systems that had helped him succeed. Instead, he began asking a deeper question. Was he using convenience to create more freedom, or was he allowing convenience to decide what deserved his attention? At work, Ethan started seeing the difference more clearly. His team was developing new tools that could make everyday tasks faster, and everyone was excited about the possibilities. But during one meeting, Ethan noticed something unusual. The discussion focused entirely on how much effort could be removed from people's lives. No one asked what people would do with the energy they gained. No one asked whether removing every challenge might also remove valuable experiences. Ethan shared his thoughts, and the room became quiet. Some people agreed that technology needed balance. Others believed that anything making life easier was automatically a positive step forward. Ethan understood both sides because he had once believed the same thing. He remembered how proud he was when he created systems that saved people time. But now he realized that time was not simply something to save. It was something to spend wisely. Later that week, Ethan met Olivia Bennett again at the same coffee shop where they had first talked. She noticed that something about him had changed. He seemed less focused on his phone and more present in the conversation. Ethan told her about his thoughts and admitted that he was beginning to question the way he had measured success. Olivia listened carefully and then shared something simple. She said that convenience was like any tool. A tool could help someone build something meaningful, but only if the person using it knew what they wanted to create. Ethan thought about that idea for a long time. The problem was never having easier options. The problem was forgetting that some valuable things could only come from effort. Friendship required time. Creativity required patience. Personal growth required facing moments that were uncomfortable. These things could not always be automated, shortened, or delivered instantly. As Ethan walked through the streets of Seattle that evening, he noticed people moving quickly around him. Everyone seemed connected through their devices, yet many looked disconnected from the world around them. He wondered how many people were saving time without realizing they were also losing experiences. That night, Ethan made a small decision. He would begin a personal experiment. For the next 30 days, he would stop asking how he could make everything faster. Instead, he would ask a different question before every choice. Would this make my life easier, or would this make my life better? He did not know where the experiment would lead. But for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt curious about the future rather than simply prepared for it. Ethan Parker began his 30-day experiment with a simple goal: to stop measuring life only by speed and start paying attention to meaning. At first, the changes felt surprisingly uncomfortable. He discovered how often he reached for the easiest option without even thinking. When he needed something, his first instinct was to find the fastest solution. When he faced a small inconvenience, his first reaction was to remove it immediately. But now, Ethan started giving himself a moment to think before making a choice. He began cooking simple meals instead of ordering everything through an application. He walked through the city instead of always choosing the quickest transportation option. He started having longer conversations without checking the time or looking at notifications. None of these changes were dramatic. They were small, ordinary decisions. Yet they made his days feel different. Ethan noticed details he had ignored for years. He noticed the smell of fresh coffee in the morning when he prepared it himself. He noticed the changing seasons while walking through Seattle neighborhoods. He noticed that conversations became more memorable when he was fully present. The most surprising part was that he did not feel like he was losing freedom. He felt like he was gaining something he had forgotten. During this process, Ethan continued meeting Olivia Bennett. Their conversations became a place where he could explore these new ideas without needing immediate answers. Olivia reminded him that growth rarely came from completely changing who someone was. It came from becoming more aware of the choices they made every day. Ethan shared that he once believed a perfect life was one where nothing required effort. Olivia asked him a question that stayed in his mind. She asked, "What if some effort is not a problem to eliminate, but an experience to appreciate?" Ethan realized he had spent years viewing challenges as obstacles. He had treated every delay, every difficult task, and every moment of uncertainty as something standing between him and happiness. But now he saw that some of those moments were the very things that created happiness. A difficult conversation could strengthen a relationship. Learning a new skill could create confidence. Preparing something with care could create a deeper connection to the result. At his company, Ethan began approaching his projects differently. He still wanted to create helpful technology, but his focus changed. Instead of asking only how to remove effort, he started asking how technology could support people while keeping important human experiences alive. His ideas were not about making people do less. They were about helping people spend their energy on what mattered most. Not everyone understood his new perspective immediately. Some coworkers believed that the future should be about eliminating every possible inconvenience. Ethan understood their excitement because he had once felt the same way. But he also knew something they had not considered yet. A life without any difficulty might sound perfect, but a life without meaningful effort could slowly become empty. As the 30-day experiment continued, Ethan realized he was not trying to escape convenience. He was learning how to use it with intention. The goal was never to make life harder. The goal was to make sure easier choices did not replace the moments that made life worth living. The 30-day experiment changed Ethan Parker in ways he never expected. When he first began, he thought the challenge would be about giving up certain conveniences. He imagined it would require discipline, patience, and effort. But as the days passed, he realized the experiment was not really about removing technology from his life. It was about becoming more aware of the choices he made every day. Ethan still used his devices. He still relied on technology for his work and responsibilities. The difference was that technology was no longer making every decision for him. He was choosing when convenience helped him and when it distracted him from something more important. One Saturday morning, Ethan visited a local community event with Olivia Bennett. It was not something he would have done before. His old routine would have filled the weekend with planned tasks, personal goals, and activities designed to maximize productivity. But this time, he simply allowed himself to be present. He watched people talk, share stories, and enjoy small moments together. There was no urgency, no pressure to move quickly, no need to measure whether the experience was useful. Ethan realized that some of the best parts of life were valuable precisely because they could not be optimized. During the event, he spoke with people from different backgrounds and heard stories about their experiences. A retired teacher shared how meaningful it was to continue helping younger generations. A local artist explained that creativity often came during moments when there was no plan at all. These conversations reminded Ethan of something important. Human experiences were not designed to be efficient. They were designed to be felt. Later, Ethan and Olivia walked through the neighborhood, discussing how society had changed. Ethan admitted that he once believed every saved minute was a victory. Olivia asked him if he still believed that. Ethan paused before answering. He said that saving time was valuable, but only if people remembered why they wanted that time in the first place. That answer showed him how much he had changed. He no longer saw convenience as a shortcut to a better life. He saw it as a tool that needed purpose. Back at work, Ethan brought this new perspective into his projects. He encouraged his team to think beyond speed and efficiency. He asked them to consider how their technology could create better experiences instead of simply faster ones. Some people questioned whether this approach was practical, but Ethan believed progress should include more than convenience. Progress should help people live with more connection, creativity, and awareness. Months earlier, Ethan had been proud of how little effort his life required. Now he was proud of something different. He was proud that he had learned to appreciate effort again. He understood that challenges were not always problems waiting to be removed. Sometimes they were opportunities to learn, connect, and grow. Ethan looked back at the person he had been before the experiment. He still recognized that person. He was still ambitious. He still loved innovation. But he was no longer chasing a life where everything became effortless. He was building a life where every moment had meaning. And that difference changed everything. Ethan Parker no longer measured his days by how much he could complete, but by how much he could experience. The change was subtle, almost invisible to the people around him, but it transformed the way he approached life. He still woke up with a schedule. He still used technology to manage his responsibilities. He still appreciated the tools that made difficult tasks easier. The difference was that he had stopped allowing convenience to become the only goal. He began choosing moments that required attention, patience, and presence. At his company, Ethan continued sharing his new perspective with his team. He encouraged them to think about technology from a different angle. Instead of only asking how a product could save users time, he asked how it could help them use that time in meaningful ways. His coworkers began exploring ideas that focused on connection, creativity, and balance. Ethan knew that technology would continue changing the world. The answer was not to resist change. The answer was to make sure progress remained connected to human values. One afternoon, Ethan received an invitation to speak at a company gathering about his experience. At first, he hesitated. He did not see himself as someone who had discovered a perfect solution. He still struggled with old habits. He still sometimes reached for the fastest option without thinking. But he accepted because he believed his journey represented a question many people were silently asking. Standing in front of the audience, Ethan did not talk about technology as a problem. He talked about awareness. He explained that convenience had brought incredible benefits to society. It helped people communicate, learn, and solve problems in ways previous generations could only imagine. But he also shared what he had learned. A life filled with easier choices was not automatically a better life. The value of time came from how people chose to spend it. Ethan told the audience about a simple realization that changed him. He had spent years trying to remove every difficult moment from his life, believing that struggle was something to avoid. But he discovered that some of the most meaningful parts of being human came from effort. The process of learning something new, the patience required to build relationships, the satisfaction of completing something with care. These experiences created memories that instant solutions could never replace. After the presentation, several people approached Ethan and shared their own stories. Some admitted they had also felt overwhelmed by the constant desire to make everything faster. Others said they had never considered what they might be losing while searching for more convenience. Ethan realized that the question was not about technology alone. It was about how people defined a meaningful life. That evening, Ethan walked home through the city streets of Seattle. The lights, sounds, and movement around him felt different than they had before. He noticed people stopping to talk, families spending time together, and small moments happening between the busy schedules of everyday life. He smiled because he understood something important. The future was not about choosing between convenience and difficulty. It was about choosing what deserved effort and what could truly be made easier. And once people understood that difference, convenience could become what it was always meant to be, a tool that served life, not a replacement for it. As Ethan Parker continued his journey, he realized that the greatest change was not in the technology around him. It was in the way he viewed his own choices. The world had not become slower. Devices were still improving, businesses were still creating faster solutions, and people were still searching for easier ways to handle daily responsibilities. But Ethan no longer saw convenience as the final destination. He saw it as a starting point. The question was no longer how much effort could be removed. The question was where effort truly mattered. Over time, Ethan noticed changes in the people around him. His team at work began thinking differently about the products they created. Instead of focusing only on speed and efficiency, they started discussing how their designs could support healthier habits and stronger connections. They considered how technology could help people spend more time doing meaningful things instead of simply completing more tasks. Ethan knew these ideas would not solve every problem, but they represented a different way of thinking. They recognized that innovation was not only about making life faster. It was about making life more valuable. Olivia Bennett remained one of the people who influenced Ethan the most. Their conversations continued, and he appreciated how she always brought him back to the human side of every idea. She reminded him that progress should not be measured only by what people gain, but also by what they protect. One evening, they walked through a quiet neighborhood discussing the future. Ethan mentioned how quickly society was changing and wondered how people would adapt as technology became even more advanced. Olivia answered that the most important skill in the future might not be learning how to use new tools. It might be learning when not to use them. Ethan thought about that for a long time. He realized that true freedom was not having access to every convenience available. True freedom was having the awareness to choose what deserved his attention. Months earlier, Ethan believed a successful life was one where everything worked perfectly. Now he understood that a meaningful life was not always perfectly organized. Sometimes the most valuable moments came from unexpected conversations, unplanned experiences, and challenges that required patience. These moments could not always be scheduled or improved by technology. They simply had to be experienced. Ethan also began sharing this message beyond his workplace. He spoke with young professionals who felt pressured to make every moment productive. He encouraged them to question the idea that being constantly busy meant they were moving forward. He explained that saving time was only useful if people used that time for things that truly mattered. The world would continue searching for convenience. That would not change. But Ethan believed people needed to remember something important. A tool should make life better, not become the reason people forget how to live it. Looking back, Ethan was grateful for the uncomfortable question that started his transformation. He had once believed that removing difficulty was the key to happiness. Now he knew that some effort created purpose, and some challenges created growth. Convenience had given him more time. Awareness had taught him what to do with it. And that understanding became the foundation of a completely different way of living. Years after Ethan Parker began questioning the role of convenience in his life, the lessons he learned continued shaping the way he approached every decision. He no longer searched for the fastest answer to every problem. Instead, he learned to ask a more meaningful question. Was this choice helping him create a better life, or was it simply helping him avoid effort? That small change in perspective became the foundation of everything that followed. Ethan still lived in Seattle. He still worked in technology. He still appreciated innovation and the possibilities it created. But his relationship with technology had changed completely. He no longer saw every inconvenience as something that needed to disappear. Some moments were valuable because they required attention. Some experiences were meaningful because they could not be rushed. He began spending more time with people instead of only communicating through screens. He made room for conversations that did not have a specific purpose. He allowed himself to explore ideas without immediately searching for the quickest solution. These simple choices reminded him that life was not a project that needed constant optimization. It was an experience that needed participation. At work, Ethan continued encouraging his team to build technology with a deeper purpose. He believed the future should not only focus on creating smarter systems. It should focus on creating a healthier relationship between people and those systems. He often shared a simple idea with his colleagues. The best technology should not make humans less involved in their own lives. It should help humans focus on the things that matter most. Over time, Ethan noticed that more people around him were asking similar questions. Friends who once measured success by productivity began thinking about balance. Coworkers who constantly chased efficiency started considering the importance of creativity and connection. Ethan knew he had not discovered a perfect answer. There would always be new technologies, new conveniences, and new challenges. But he believed people could move forward without losing themselves along the way. One evening, Ethan returned to the same coffee shop where he had first spoken with Olivia Bennett. The place looked almost exactly the same. The same tables stood near the windows. The same quiet atmosphere filled the room. But Ethan was not the same person who had walked in there months earlier. He remembered when he believed the goal of life was to remove every difficult moment. Now he understood that difficulty was not always something to fear. Some challenges built confidence. Some delays created memories. Some effort created a deeper appreciation for the results. Olivia asked him if he thought convenience was a good thing or a bad thing. Ethan smiled and answered that it was neither. Convenience was simply a tool. Like any tool, its value depended on how people used it. The danger was not making life easier. The danger was forgetting why life was worth experiencing. As Ethan walked through the city that night, he noticed something he had once overlooked. People were not just moving from one task to another. They were living small stories every day. A conversation between friends. A family sharing a meal. Someone learning something new. Someone taking time to appreciate a quiet moment. These were the things no technology could fully replace. Ethan finally understood the hidden lesson behind convenience. Time was never valuable because it could be saved. Time was valuable because it could be lived. And the greatest improvement in life was not creating a world where nothing required effort. It was creating a world where people still remembered what was worth their effort.